we do quite a bit of beltless training on the Patreon workouts. I think it's good for a lot of your warm up and mid range sets. I think in the top sets, it's not really worth the possible back injuries that you could occur. But I think that doing a lot of work with no belt is a good idea. Maybe not above like 80%. So anything 80% above or your max, I probably would use a belt just for safety. But yeah, I mean, with your lighter weights and your warm-up sets, definitely no belt for sure. Guys, I know you guys ask a lot about Jason Blaha. I have no idea who that is. I don't study him or anything. If I can talk on the treadmill, you don't train hard. Go outside your house and walk. No, I don't know Jason Blaha. I have no idea who he is. Sounds like a douche. Probably not as big of a douche as meat-based vegan, but pretty close. Yeah, if somebody's not benching close to 6 or squatting close to a grand, I don't know who they are. I'm pretty sure if that Jason Blaha guy, I'm pretty sure he would not be on any lifting team that I was ever on. If you guys, I've talked about this before, but in the AM crew at Westside Barbell, the average squat was 1,035 from 7 guys. The average bench was 650, and the average deadlift was 800. Yeah, Blaha squats 600 pounds. Sounds like another fucking, what's his name? Starting strength guy. Fucking total idiot, right? Wants to tell everybody how to squat, and couldn't even squat my bench press. It's pretty funny. And for some reason, people listen. Building muscle and staying injury-free. I mean, absolutely. I mean, once you have an injury, your training will be limited, so you have to stay away from those as long as possible. For me, I didn't break my first world record until I'd been competing for about 15 years. A lot of that's just because I didn't have the genetics to be amazing, like right off the rip, like an Ed Cohen or a John Hack or somebody like that. I had to work really hard and be really diligent for a lot of years to get up to that point. So in my opinion, for most people, yes, you're absolutely right. You're gonna have to train way longer. I mean, everybody wants to sell you that they can get you better in 8 weeks or they can get you better in 12 weeks or whatever. But in reality, it takes years to get really good. Especially if you have average or maybe even a little bit above average genetics. And you start late, maybe you don't have the background. Like a lot of what helped me with lifting was my vast array of different sports that I trained when I was a kid. I was actually a really good swimmer. I was swimming within a few seconds of getting looked at for college scholarships as a freshman in high school for the 50 and the 100 freestyle. I was also really good at BMX. I was actually sponsored by Cannondale for short track mountain bike racing for my legs. I'm not a huge fan of seated good mornings. I think that for most people, they're too hard on your back. They don't allow people to give a little bit at the knee. And most people's lumbars are not conditioned enough to do seated good mornings. I didn't use any type of seated good morning until I was deadlifting way over 765. And I never really saw I got a lot out of them. Why do you guys always talk about this Jason Blaha guy? Who the fuck is that dude? Guys, don't listen to people that are not strong. It's like, it just cracks me up, you know? There's so many weak fucking people out there that want to tell you their advice or give you, if they haven't been at a high level and they haven't stayed at a high level for a long time, what makes you think they know anything? You know, that's the problem with the internet right now, is everybody can have an opinion or a voice and they don't have to prove anything. Cosmic Knight, you just need to come and see what we're doing on Patreon and look at the way we got our workouts laid out. Like, just because you have a push-pull and an upper-lower, I have no idea if that's good. Probably not. Best standing overhead press? I don't know. I've done seated because the standing one, I think you can cheat too much. Seated, I've done 405 for a couple reps to about here. Straight up. I've done 405 for like 2 or 3, maybe about 10 years ago. I never saw a lot out of it, and it's just super hard on your shoulders and beats your shoulders to pieces. Most people I know that used overhead press to build their bench press and did it on a consistent basis can't even lean over and wash their hair now because their shoulders are so trashed. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times getting a high, I mean, I've been on YouTube for 7 or 8 years and got like 113,000. You know, where guys like him, if they've been on there for 15, I'm sure he would have quite a bit. It's the same thing with Athean X. You know, me and him are friends. He started his YouTube channel like around 2003 or something. A lot of times it's just how long you've been around. For me, YouTube is sketchy because, you know, again, I think guys like Athean X and people like that kind of deserve to have that kind of a following when you're a physical therapist and you've worked with pro teams. So a lot of people don't know this, but Athean X got started by being a physical therapist for the New York Mets. So to me, that gives you a lot of credibility on what you're doing because, one, you're working for a pro team, and two, you have a doctorate. And I think that should be somewhat of a standard for somebody to have a good channel on YouTube. I wish there was more regulation on that, because if we have guys like Jason Blaha, I mean, like, I have no idea who that dude is. And obviously he's not strong. He never competed against me or any of the meets I was ever at. His education probably isn't very high. Say that you are fake, Natty. I've never lied about taking anabolics. Dips are another exercise that's really bad for you. But back in the day, before I did a lot of research on the shoulder joint, we would do dips with 445s around the waist for sets of 6 to 8. Michigan, going to get the players to come to strength Michigan at all. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, every player and every team, like Michigan football, back when I was in school, they had a horrible strength program. They used a HIIT training program. They would do machines 1 set till failure. They didn't do any ground-based movements. They didn't do any barbell movements, which we know is not a good idea. And I think they've slowly changed over the years. But to be honest with you, I've never been a super fan of a lot of different strength training programs in the college range. I mean, I saw a video of like guys doing forced eccentrics at Alabama and doing just crazy shit, you know what I mean? And so it's hard. And again, some of these strength coaches have the bare minimum accolades, and they're there because they're somebody's friend. They're not there because they're the best guy for the job. And then you also have to remember too, it's how well they fit into the program. Meaning you could have the best strength coach in the world, but if he feels like his hour of time with the guys is important and he has a special teams guy or an offensive or defensive coordinator that's constantly cutting into his time to develop the athletes, some guys just don't get mad about it. They just say, okay, yeah, whatever, I'm just a part of the cog. And some guys that stand up and say, listen, you're cutting into my time. This is my time for my guys to train. The coaches that think that only football practice matters get pissed and they get fired. So do. Yeah, superset exercise, yeah. Cal Dietz, yeah, I've actually read his book. Cal Dietz is pretty smart. I think there's a lot of valuable things that he does in his triphasic stuff, for sure. It looks to me a lot like Isserin stuff. So if you read a lot of books, there's a guy named Vladimir Isserin that's kind of a newer Russian scientist, and he has a very similar mindset from what I can remember to Cal Dietz's triphasic system. So I would say that it's probably one of the better ones I've seen in a while, for sure. I've never taken Tren. I never liked it. I only took it maybe twice and got so like flu-ish sick from it that it made me feel bad. So Tren was never anything that I liked or took. Yeah, it's. I think it's not a Y. I think it's an I. ISIRUN, I think. But yeah, he's got a training book out that's pretty good. It has a lot of, from what I remember, a lot of similarities to Cal Dietz's stuff. Could have been where Cal Dietz kind of came up with the idea of the triphasic stuff. But again, Cal Dietz, another guy that maybe him and I don't agree on everything, but the dude was head strength coach for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's been around a long time. He's got a lot of experience with pro athletes. So you got to give him some level of respect. He's not some YouTube fucker that has no credentials and never worked with anybody. Yeah, I think Mark Felix is one of the all-time badasses for sure. There's a little bit of difference in Patreon and Trainer Rook. With the Patreon, if you get on there and subscribe to Top Tier, you have access to me to ask me questions. If you don't have certain bars, or like right now, we're doing we were doing a chain workout for the last 3 weeks. Some people didn't have chains, so I told them what to do other than the chains. Whereas in the Trainer Rook app, you kind of get what we put out. Not that it's not any good, it just has a little bit less feedback. We don't require feedback on Trainer Rook because we make it so much cheaper. So Trainer Rook's $30 a month and Patreon is $50. And at the $50, you get access to me. You can ask me questions on stuff. Whereas in the Trainer Rook, you just kind of follow what we put out to make it affordable. Who's ahead of Follistatin gene therapy. Jim Stepani, I don't know. I don't know him very well. I'd have to study him a little bit, but I haven't seen a lot of his stuff. I've heard the name before, but I don't know who that is, so I wouldn't be able to answer that. The best specialty bars, probably, safety bar is definitely one of them, because you can do so much stuff with them. You can front squat. You can do normal back squat with a higher bar position because it's a safety bar. You can do JM presses with them, which if you look back in my older videos, I've done 405 for I think 6, which is crazy elbow strength. But the safety bar is definitely one of those ones because squatting with a straight bar all the time is going to cause shoulder problems. And so if you can rotate and use a bar that has much less shoulder impingement issues and shoulder destructive issues, it's really important. A fat bar is really good too for a different hand position. I like the Swiss or the football bars just because they're a different position for your shoulder. They all have different advantages and disadvantages, but I would say the safety bar and the fat bar are probably the two you can do the most with, just my opinion. How difficult should winning warm-ups be? So if you go to the website, winningstrength.com, we have ultimate winning warm-up download videos that you can purchase, and it'll go over all the steps. But in reality, the warm-up shouldn't be too bad. It goes in waves, just like anything else. Sometimes the workouts, the warm-up should be a little bit harder. Other times they should be a little bit easier. It's just like anything else. There's no concrete amount or intensity that you should use. It should be adjustable. And so, like anything else, conditioning is going to play a huge part. So 4 sets of 25 done in like 15 minutes, which is pretty fast, is really developing GPP and ligament and tendon density. And then you have it where it's a little heavier, where you might rest a little bit more, and then you're going to build a little bit more muscle mass and a little bit more tension. You do that more in the off season to where, you're not really worried about fucking with your main lifts, as far as like, you're not trying to, like back when I was my strongest, we would use 75 and 100 pound dumbbells for 4 sets of 25 on the bench presses before we would actually max. But it took me about 4 or 5 years to be able to do that and actually not affect my max. And my theory on that is that when you do a max effort squat, especially when you're any good, you do a max effort squat where you're not fatigued in the bench. And so by pre-fatiguing it in a powerlifting meet, you're used to benching tired, and therefore your body will get better. So well, the only big thing about rucking that you have to be careful with is compression. So to me, I like using stuff for conditioning that's very low compression, especially if you're playing a sport like football, where everything's compressive that you're doing. When you tackle, when you're sprinting, all of that's compression. And so for me, if I was an offensive lineman and I was trying to work on conditioning, I would do a lot of pool walking. I would do a lot of, let's say, belt squat marches. I would do a lot of sled dragging, stuff like that, because you're going to get similar benefit, but you're not going to be pushing down on the vertebrae as much. And the thing of it is like with cardio, is you got to do shit you can sustain. Like right now I have a horrible chest and like nose congestion. I'm walking at like 2.6 miles an hour, and I'm just kind of getting everything flowing because I just trained really hard for Tuesday and Wednesday. And so I'm trying to actively restore from my workouts. Squat records. Let's see. Well, as far as actual records, I'm not really sure, but I can walk you through some of my milestones. So I squatted over 700 before I was 20. I was one of the youngest guys to squat 900 at 23. I squatted 826, which was the American record for the USAPL drug tested in 2003 at 23. I broke the, the squat record. I was really close when I broke the world record, my first world record total in 2008, which I'd have been 28 years old. I squatted 1,085 to break the world record total. Then I squatted 1197.6 in 2011, which was the biggest squat done at 4 times body weight, the lightest body weight. So I weighed like 299, then squatted 1,200, so I was like 4 times body weight. That was a world record. Then I broke the world record in the squat. I did, it was 826. I did 832 in 2014. And then in 2015 or 16, I squatted 865.5, which was the world record again. So, which was interesting because when I first started lifting, I never thought that my squats would be my best lift because my legs were broken when I was a kid. So I got hit by a drunk driver on my bicycle when I was 6 years old. So I had to be homeschooled all of first grade, and I was basically living in a hospital bed for about 11 months, and then I was in a boot cast on my right leg for another 6 months. And so I didn't get the best start with squatting. And so it took a lot of work and a lot of diligence to get that good. So I think, as far as I know, I'm the only lifter that's ever broke all-time world records with multiple leg fractures and come back from it and actually done really well. Oh, Mike Israetel says you have the best bolt squat. Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, it's because, one, I have a biomechanics background. Two, I squatted real weights. So putting that two information together, making the machine works really well. Yeah, me and Israetel are on pretty good speaking terms. I think maybe one of his media guys used me in a video talking about fast eccentrics being bad, so I had to come back and bust his balls. But yeah, I mean, me and Mike are cool. Mike Israetel, though, I think in some respects, gets a little bit out of his lane on, understanding different contractual properties. He likes to talk about muscle hypertrophy, and I think that's where his major mindset is, but fast eccentrics do have an important part in training, especially in overspeed eccentrics. So it's hard because we all have different backgrounds, and I think it's really easy for us to be like, well, this guy fucking sucks because he doesn't listen to what we're saying, or this guy. But in reality, Israetel's stuff, I think, if you look at it from a whole, is probably really good for beginners and intermediates. But for advanced guys, I think by the time you become an advanced lifter or an advanced bodybuilder, you're going to have different ways of training. Jay Cutler and Ronnie Coleman did not train the same way. They both arguably had some of the best physiques ever. Ronnie Coleman was big into heavy singles and doubles, and Jay Cutler stayed lighter and got hypertrophy in that as well, which could have been a difference in muscle fiber type or whatever. But I think kind of bottlenecking things into only one way is difficult. And that's why I love the Conjugate system so much. And I feel that I'm the one that should have the right to talk about Conjugate, since I broke world records with Conjugate and I've been studying it for 25 years. But Conjugate doesn't really say that max effort work is better, or dynamic effort work is better, or repetition effort work is better. It says that they're all equally beneficial if done correctly. And so finding a system that has the ability to use all different types of contractions is actually the most important, because it doesn't bottleneck it down and say, slow eccentrics are the best, or fast eccentrics are the best, or certain bar position or technique is the best. It says fix your weaknesses, and it says to fix your weaknesses and use a variety of methods in order to get better. View on slow concentrics, you can definitely use them. I'm not sure it's the best way to have compensatory acceleration. So if you want to turn on the most motor units, you got to work quickly on the concentric. But when you work quickly, you also tend to use stretch reflex. So there are positions and places to do slower concentrics. If you were on Patreon workouts right now, which most of you guys are not, which is really unfortunate because you would already understand that question. But we did burnout sets yesterday after speed work that were 2 seconds down and 2 seconds up, taking the concentric power out of it, therefore doing slow concentrics. Why? Because we had just got done doing 8 sets of fast concentrics. So not one of them is better than the other, but doing one the same way all the time, again, is law of accommodation. Resources to keep your knees healthy. My knees are amazing, which is crazy because the shit that I've done, they probably shouldn't be that good. But a lot of it's just making sure that your hamstrings and your glutes are doing the work that your quads, most people think your quads should be doing the most of. And so for me, my opinion is that if your knees are bothering you, there's one or two things that's going on. Either one, you're training like I'm not being an asshole, but you're training like a fucking idiot. and you have certain muscle imbalances that are damaging your knees when you're doing either compound movements or whatever other movement you're doing. 2, your rest periods may not be long enough between actual durations of training, meaning like you can't train legs like 3 times a week. You're just not going to get enough recovery. 3, like we talked about with weaknesses, your technique is way off. I'm not sure what you're asking there, Kenner. With variation, how do you keep up with your strength level on those lifts? Well, your strength isn't always based on doing the same movements all the time. This is where everybody fucks up. It's like, that means you're getting better at the skill, but you're not actually getting stronger. So you have to remember that there's 2 different ways you can measure it. If I do, say, a 10-week cycle, and I want to know what my barbell back squat is, right? And I only barbell back squat on week 10 and week 1. And everything else I do in between is different. And then I squat. I truly got stronger because I didn't just master the movement. So there's a difference between mastering a movement and actually getting stronger. And so you have to know the difference between the 2. Man, I wish the sinus stuff would go away. It fucking sucks. Yeah, I really hope to see you guys on the Patreon app. If you're a little bit more tight for money, on the Train Heroic app, just start training smarter. Start using better exercises. Start using a proper periodization model. You know, it's difficult because honestly, I don't like really being on here and trying to sell people products, but most people train so fucking stupid that it's difficult, especially when you have products that will help you, 1, reduce your knee pain, 2, make you stronger without actually mastering the lift, you know, like we were just talking about earlier. Little part of the lift. Scott, that's probably not a greatest way to train because you're going to train your motor patterns to not do a full range of motion, which over time is going to cause you to have distinct strengths and weaknesses. So I'm always a bigger fan of trying to move through the most rep range. We do different heights of boxes and pauses and shit like that and deficits. Hey, Lewis, if you pulled something at work, a lot of times I've seen muscle pulls usually happen because of dehydration. So make sure that if you have a manual labor job and you pulled something at work that you got enough sodium in your body. One of the big things you can use on that is thermotabs. So I would definitely try to take that. But if you can work around, just get those muscles hot, you know, doing a lot of hamstring curls and glutes and things like that don't really involve your abs for a week or so until it goes away, it'd probably be your best idea, because if it's already pulled, then you're going to make motor pattern changes in your main lifts, and it could be detrimental, could cause another injury or injure that even worse. So just try to keep moving. Don't don't do anything that might cause that area to get worse. Actually, I thought I did everything pretty close to right. I started lifting at 12, started competing at 13, which is for fun. Didn't start really ramping up the pressure of competing until about 16, 17. Won my first Worlds when I was 19. Started getting introduced to Louis stuff around 21, 20. Broke all the collegiate records at 23. Squatted 1,000 at 26 years old. I did everything right, and I did it long term, and I didn't get hurt from it. So I think if the only thing I could have changed probably earlier would have been I would have just ate a little cleaner when I was younger. Because to me, I was a hard gainer. I mean, I graduated high school, I weighed 250, but it took me like 4 years to weigh 280. It just took me a long time to gain weight. And so if I could have done it cleaner, I think that would have been better. I think I would have been a little bit leaner in my younger years. I'd have been a little bit stronger, quicker. So, well, I got the fire guys getting ready to come in. Thanks for joining me for this live. If you can, go to winningstrength.com. Check out Patreon. Check out Train Heroic. If you're really into it, check out online coaching. The manuals are also amazing. Usually working around 12-week blocks. So we got a lot of good information out there to help you guys out. So talk to you guys soon.